good idea. We don't want to come down on one side or the other. Let's just say no. And they didn't personally have to say no. The White House just said, no way.
Yeah, it was the end of the
time in the day it was. Your take on Harry and Meghan's upcoming trip. Now, they're going to the Netherlands. They're not going to be welcomed officially by the Dutch royal.
It didn't leak softly. It didn't drift out through some forgettable press note buried under weather updates and sports scores. This landed like a bomb. A reputational earthquake that rattled newsrooms, froze PR phones mid-ring, and sent aides into that familiar, panicked silence where everyone pretends they didn't see the headline yet. The announcement of the Royal U.S. tour wasn't just another date on a calendar. It was a statement. Sharp, deliberate, unmistakable. The monarchy was coming to America in full force for the nation's 250th birthday. And Prince Harry and Meghan Markle? Nowhere. Not invited. Not included, not even politely acknowledged, just gone. As if they'd never existed in the equation at all. That absence was loud, deafening, and everyone heard it.
Prince Harry, yes, good. Gun cop U-turn, Home Office review guard bang could pave the way for a king visit, exclusive by Matt Wilkinson.
That silence said more than any palace spokesperson ever could. There were no excuses offered, no vague references to schedules or logistics. The narrative locked in instantly. This wasn't about protocol. This was about relevance. Or rather, the brutal confirmation that Harry and Meghan no longer had any. Headlines didn't soften the blow. They sliced. The royal family returns to America. The Sussexes iced out. Working royals chosen. Montecito fantasy exposed. And what made it sting even more was the lack of outrage. No shock. No gasps. Just acceptance. The media didn't ask why Harry and Meghan weren't included. They asked why anyone ever thought they would be, and that was the moment the real meltdown began. Behind the gates of Montecito, the reality reportedly hit like a wall. This wasn't some petty family drama. This was a global demotion, public, surgical, final, and the palace didn't argue, didn't defend, didn't explain. It simply moved forward, calm, confident, efficient, as if shedding excess weight. The monarchy was reclaiming America, and it was doing it with such precision that Harry and Meghan's absence felt intentional, strategic, permanent.
Media's devastating impact on their children. There was no better place to share this than on World Mental Health Day with Project Healthy Minds.
Across Washington, New York, and Hollywood, reactions were quietly ruthless. Organizers spoke in hushed tones about optics and stability. Diplomats welcomed the clarity. Entertainment insiders admitted off the record that Suss's drama had become exhausting. Brands crave predictability. Charities want consistency. Networks want figures who elevate events, not hijack them. And Harry and Meghan arrived with baggage, cameras, conditions, controversy. It all felt like too much effort for too little return. The irony was savage. Meghan had built her post-royal identity on the belief that America was her home turf, her audience, her moment, the place she would finally be celebrated without restraint. And yet, the biggest American stage of the decade was being assembled without her name anywhere near the call sheet. At the same time, the timing couldn't have been worse. Netflix, once breathless with excitement over the Sussex brand, went silent. The buzz evaporated, calls stopped coming, projects stalled. What once felt limitless suddenly looked like diminishing returns. Spotify had already delivered the most humiliating blow imaginable. Not a gentle cancellation, a public execution with a single word. Grifters. That label clung to everything Meghan touched afterward, including her carefully curated pivot into lifestyle branding, the jars of artisanal jam, the staged kitchen warmth, a duchess selling preserves while the real royals prepared to meet presidents. The contrast was merciless. As the palace rolled out its plan, it became clear this wasn't a one-off visit. This was a campaign. King Charles and Queen Camilla handling diplomacy and symbolism. Prince William and Princess Catherine following with modern Polish and global appeal. 2 tours, perfectly timed, designed to dominate American media from spring to summer. Soft power, executed flawlessly. And there was no room for Harry and Meghan to squeeze in without looking desperate. That was the real wound, not exclusion, irrelevance. The palace didn't block them. It simply didn't need them. The roles they once claimed were uniquely theirs had been filled, and filled by people who didn't burn the house down on their way out. For Harry, the realization was cruel. He hadn't just walked away from duty, he'd walked away from necessity. The country he fled now welcomed his family with admiration and open arms. His father arrived commanding respect. His brother arrived embodying continuity. And Harry watched from the sidelines, stripped not just of role, but of purpose. For a man haunted by being the spare, the truth was unbearable. He was now unnecessary. Meghan's nightmare was different. America didn't reject her. It stopped paying attention. And in celebrity culture, indifference is fatal. The audience she believed, she commanded, had shifted its gaze toward figures who didn't demand sympathy, who didn't explain themselves, who showed up, did the work, and left without asking to be applauded. The U.S. tourist snub wasn't just diplomatic. It was cultural. A verdict. Continuity over chaos. Duty over drama. Substance over spectacle. And in making that choice, the monarchy exposed a reality Harry and Meghan had spent years running from. You can leave the institution, but you can't replace it. You can reject the system, but you can't replicate its power.
The anticipated tour of Nigeria, but many are still wondering what the purpose of this tour was.
The silence that followed was devastating. No fiery statement from Montecito, no denial, no glossy counter-announcement dropped to steal attention. Just absence, and absence, in the attention economy they chose to live in, is lethal. Morning shows pivoted effortlessly to royal logistics. Commentators debated symbolism. Magazines prepared spreads on Catherine's wardrobe. Charities reshuffled guest lists hoping for royal patronage. And Harry and Meghan reduced to a footnote, a once hot storyline that no longer commanded oxygen. The precision of the snub was chilling. The palace didn't insult them. It didn't criticize them. It didn't even acknowledge them. It treated them the way institutions treat irrelevance, by moving on. That's when panic reportedly set in behind the scenes. Aides scrambling not to deny the tour, but to understand it. Who approved it? Who coordinated the timing? Who decided there would be no olive branch? Because that absence wasn't accidental. It was policy. For Meghan, the shift was brutal. American media stopped framing her as a victim and started framing her as the architect of her own isolation. Commentators weren't sympathetic. They were analytical. You can't quit a job and then be shocked you're not invited to the office party. The tone had changed permanently. The Oprah interview, once treated like a cultural earthquake, now felt dated, calculated, rehearsed. Accusations vague, accountability absent. America reassessed, and reassessment is unforgiving. Harry's situation darkened further. Military charities he once championed aligned fully with the working royals, networks reassigned. Invitations slowed, not out of anger, out of irrelevance. The institution absorbed his absence seamlessly. That was the part no one warned him about. He believed his departure would force reform. Instead, it refined itself. Hollywood noticed. Studios recalculated. Longevity matters more than controversy, and longevity had moved on. Meghan's attempts to reclaim narrative control began to look strained. Lifestyle branding works when it feels visionary. Hers felt reactive, desperate, and audiences sensed it. When they do, they disengage. Harry and Meghan assumed America would adopt them fully if the monarchy rejected them. What they didn't understand is that America doesn't adopt grievances. It adopts winners. As the tour drew closer, symbolism sharpened. The monarchy wasn't visiting. It was reasserting itself, reclaiming space the Sussexes thought they owned. By the time the royal plane touched down, the verdict was already written. They weren't being punished. They were being replaced. And replacement is worse than rejection, because rejection implies importance. Replacement implies redundancy. As the cameras flashed for the royals who stayed, the couple who left confronted a truth they could no longer spin. You can walk away from power, but power rarely follows you. The spotlight didn't turn against them, it simply moved, and this time, it wasn't coming back. Harry felt it in the smallest interactions. Conversations that once revolved around him now drifted elsewhere. People were polite, respectful even, but distracted. The kind of distraction that tells you your presence no longer changes the temperature of the room. He wasn't rejected, he was bypassed. And that distinction cut deeper than any criticism ever could. Rejection still acknowledges power. Being bypassed means you've already been processed and filed away. Meghan, meanwhile, interpreted the shift differently. In this telling, she didn't see disinterest. She saw betrayal. She believed allies had gone quiet, not because they were tired, but because they were afraid. Afraid to speak, afraid to align too publicly, afraid of choosing the wrong side. That belief kept hope alive longer than it should have survived. Because as long as silence could be reframed as strategy, the illusion of leverage remained intact. Behind closed doors, advisors debated paths forward. Another memoir would feel redundant. Another interview would sound recycled. A dramatic reconciliation gesture would require surrendering control, and that was non-negotiable. Every option demanded something they were unwilling to give up. The certainty that they were right, and certainty, once hardened into identity, becomes a prison. The palace, meanwhile, continued doing nothing, and that nothing spoke volumes. By refusing to respond, to engage, to acknowledge the noise, it communicated confidence, not defensiveness, not fear. Just certainty that whatever storm Harry and Meghan once threatened had already passed. Institutions don't win by shouting. They win by enduring. Hollywood recalculated accordingly. Proximity without access lost value overnight. Titles without duty became decorative. Grievances stopped converting into deals. Studios don't invest in unresolved narratives. They invest in trajectories. And the Sussex trajectory felt stuck, looping the same emotional beats without resolution. William and Catherine, by contrast, offered something refreshingly dull in the best possible way: consistency, presence, restraint. They didn't explain why they mattered. They demonstrated it. Again and again, their relevance didn't spike. It accumulated. And accumulation is how trust is built. Meghan's brand began to feel restless. The constant pivots, while logical individually, blurred together. Empowerment, wellness, artistry, privacy, visibility. Each made sense. Together, they felt unfocused. The audience struggled to understand what she stood for beyond standing against something else. And opposition ages fast. Once the enemy fades, so does the energy. Harry's internal reckoning deepened. He had defined himself for years as the rebel, the truth teller, the one brave enough to walk away. But watching his brother modernize the monarchy without spectacle forced an uncomfortable question. If change was possible without destruction, then what exactly had he sacrificed everything for? That question lingered, unanswered, corrosive. Freedom, he realized too late, had cost him structure, and structure had given his life meaning. Without it, days blurred together, purpose dissolved. The constraints he once resented had anchored him. Without them, he wasn't discovering himself. He was drifting, and drift is visible, even when you try to hide it behind projects and press releases. Public sympathy didn't vanish in anger. It dried up in confusion. What do they want now? Became the dominant reaction. Not hostile, just puzzled. The story had lost its destination. In contrast, the royal tour offered clarity. A beginning, a purpose, a reason. Audience craved resolution. Harry and Meghan offered questions without answers. As time passed, the consequences sharpened. Philanthropic boards hesitated. Corporate partners paused. Not because of controversy, but because uncertainty doesn't sell. The Sussexes weren't canceled. They were skipped. And being skipped comes without explanation, without appeal, without recourse. Meghan reportedly obsessed over optics. If she could just find the right framing, the right language, momentum would return. But momentum doesn't come from framing alone. It comes from trust. And trust, once overdrawn, replenishes slowly, if at all. Harry faced a quieter erosion. The military community that once rallied around him now spoke of William with equal reverence. Veterans didn't choose sides. They chose service. And William filled the vacuum Harry left behind without comment, without competition. That replacement confirmed the truth Harry had avoided. His role had never been his alone. It belonged to the crown, and the crown had reassigned it. Montecito grew quieter. Comfortable, luxurious, hollow. Luxury without purpose magnifies doubt, and doubt crept everywhere. Were they wrong to believe visibility equaled influence? Were they wrong to assume America would crown them? Those questions didn't need answers to hurt. Their presence alone was enough. The institution moved forward, expanded, adapted, and the public noticed. That was the final blow. Not exclusion, not criticism. Proof. Proof that the future didn't include them, not as villains, not as martyrs, but as cautionary figures, a reminder that walking away from power doesn't grant it. That telling your story endlessly doesn't guarantee belief. That relevance isn't claimed. It's renewed. The meltdown wasn't loud, it was quiet. And quiet, in the end, was the most devastating sound of all.